Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're tackling the absolute cream of the crop, the top 30 best roguelike games on Nintendo Switch. These aren't just good games, these are the ones that defined the genre, the ones that set the standard for everything else. If you're new to roguelikes or you're a veteran looking for your next obsession, this list has something for everyone. Let's dive right into it. Inscryption is honestly one of the most unique deck-building roguelikes I've ever played. You're sitting at a table across from a mysterious figure in a dark cabin, playing what seems like a simple card game, but it quickly evolves into something way more sinister. The gameplay mixes deck building with escape room puzzles and even some light horror elements. You'll collect creature cards, sacrifice them strategically, and use their abilities to overpower your opponent's defenses. What really got me hooked is how the game constantly subverts your expectations. Just when you think you understand the rules, it throws a curveball that completely changes everything. The atmosphere is incredibly creepy, with excellent sound design, and the meta-narrative keeps unfolding in unexpected ways. Each run teaches you something new about the cards and mechanics, and there are secrets hidden everywhere. The art style is deliberately unsettling, mixing realistic elements with twisted card illustrations. It's not just about building the perfect deck, it's about surviving the psychological mind games and uncovering what's really happening in that cabin. Dicey Dungeons takes the concept of dice-based combat and turns it into an incredibly addictive roguelike experience. You play as one of 6 different characters who've been transformed into giant dice by Lady Luck, forced to fight through her game show dungeon. The core gameplay revolves around rolling dice each turn and assigning them to your equipment. A sword might need a die showing 4 or higher, while a shield could use any even number. What makes this so engaging is how each character plays completely differently, with unique rules that change your entire approach. The warrior is straightforward, the thief can steal enemy dice, and the robot has a limit on dice values. Episodes add modifiers and challenges that keep runs feeling fresh, even after dozens of attempts. The combat is surprisingly tactical because you're constantly managing randomness and making the best of whatever you roll. The art style is colorful and charming, with a game show aesthetic that perfectly matches the theme. Shogun Showdown is a brilliant turn-based roguelike that plays like a tactical puzzle game mixed with deck-building mechanics. You're a samurai moving across a grid-based battlefield, and every action you take is determined by tiles you've collected. Each tile represents a different attack, movement, or ability, and they're arranged in a sequence that plays out automatically. The genius here is in planning your moves several steps ahead, because enemies telegraph their attacks, so you need to position yourself strategically while maximizing damage. Every run, you'll find new tiles to add to your collection, and deciding which ones to keep versus which to remove is crucial for building an effective strategy. The combat feels like solving a puzzle in real time, as you calculate the best sequence of actions. Boss fights are intense because they require you to really understand your tile combinations and think multiple turns ahead. The minimalist art style keeps everything clear and readable, which is essential when you're planning complex sequences. Moonlighter nails the perfect loop of dungeon crawling by day and shopkeeping by night, creating this addictive cycle that kept me playing for hours. You're Will, a shopkeeper who secretly explores dangerous dungeons at night to find loot, then sells that same loot in your shop during the day to fund better equipment. The combat is action-based, with dodge rolling, weapon variety, and enemy patterns to learn across 4 main dungeons. What makes this special is the shopkeeping simulation. You have to price items correctly by reading customer reactions, prevent theft, and manage your inventory space carefully. The dungeons themselves are procedurally generated, with increasingly challenging enemies and valuable loot the deeper you go. You can only carry so much, so every run becomes a risk-reward decision about pushing further or heading back to sell your goods. The money you earn upgrades your shop, unlocks new equipment, and expands the town with new services. The pixel art is gorgeous, with detailed environments and smooth animations.
Doing everything to finally.
Balatro takes poker hands and turns them into the foundation of an incredibly deep roguelike deck builder that's nearly impossible to put down. You're playing poker hands to score points and reach target scores across multiple rounds, but the twist is you can modify your deck, enhance cards, and collect jokers that create wild scoring combinations. The basic gameplay has you selecting 5 cards to play as a poker hand, earning points based on the hand type and individual card values. Where it gets insane is the jokers. These modify your scoring in creative ways, like multiplying certain suits, adding bonus points for specific cards, or triggering special effects when conditions are met. You'll draft new cards, remove weak ones, use tarot cards to enhance or transform your deck, and collect planet cards that permanently level up hand types. The strategic depth is enormous because you're constantly evaluating which jokers synergize, what hand types to focus on, and how to build around your current deck composition. Loop Hero does something completely different by making the roguelike almost idle-like while still requiring constant strategic decisions. Your hero automatically walks in a loop around a circular path, fighting enemies that appear, while you place terrain and structure cards around the loop to spawn resources, enemies, and buffs. The core gameplay is about managing the risk-reward of what you place, because every card you add makes your hero stronger, but also spawns more dangerous enemies. You're not controlling combat directly. Instead, you're equipping your hero with gear that drops from enemies and deciding how to build the landscape itself. Forests provide healing. Mountains give extra health. Meadows spawn enemies, but also drop resources. And combining certain tiles creates new structures with unique effects. Each loop takes several minutes, and you're constantly deciding whether to push for one more loop or retreat to base to bank your resources. Between expeditions, you use gathered resources to construct permanent buildings that unlock new cards and upgrades. Ape Out is pure adrenaline-fueled chaos, wrapped in a striking minimalist art style that looks like a jazz album cover come to life. You're a gorilla escaping captivity, smashing through buildings and ripping through guards in these intense top-down levels. The gameplay is brutally simple. You move, grab enemies to use as shields or projectiles, and throw them into walls, other guards, or explosive barrels. What makes every run exhilarating is the percussion-based dynamic soundtrack that responds to your actions, creating drum beats when you kill enemies and building tension as you progress. Levels are procedurally generated, so while the overall structure remains consistent, enemy placements and paths change each attempt. You're always one hit away from death, which keeps the tension incredibly high, and you need to think fast about positioning and using enemies against each other. The color palette shifts between albums, each representing a different area with its own theme and aesthetic. Cult of the Lamb combines dungeon crawling action with cult management simulation in a way that's both adorable and surprisingly dark. You're a possessed lamb, saved from sacrifice, who must build a cult in the name of a chained deity, alternating between exploring procedurally generated dungeons for resources and managing your followers back at your compound. The combat is fast-paced action, with dodge rolling, various weapons from swords to hammers, and curses that act as special abilities with cooldowns. Between runs, you're constructing buildings, performing rituals, giving sermons, and keeping your followers happy, fed, and faithful. The cult management has real depth. Followers have needs, traits, and can dissent if you neglect them, so you're constantly balancing dungeon runs with base maintenance. You'll unlock new buildings, rituals, and follower customization options as you progress through the 4 main regions, each with distinct enemies and bosses. Nobody Saves the World reinvents the action RPG roguelike formula with its incredible transformation system and quest design. You're a literal nobody who finds a magic wand that lets you transform into different forms, from a basic rat and ranger to a dragon, robot, and even a toilet. Each form has unique abilities and plays completely differently. The rat is fast and focuses on poison. The guard has a shield bash and defensive abilities, and the magician casts spells from range. The genius is in how forms level up through completing specific quests, like dealing damage with poison or hitting enemies from behind, which naturally encourages you to mix and match abilities between forms. You can equip abilities from any unlocked form into your current one, creating wild hybrid builds, like a turtle with horse speed or a bodybuilder with necromancer summons. The world is open from the start, with procedurally generated dungeons scattered everywhere, scaling to your level so you can explore freely. Enter the Gungeon is the ultimate bullet hell roguelike that perfectly captures that just one more run addiction with its incredibly tight gunplay and massive weapon variety. You're selecting one of several characters called Gungeoneers, each with unique starting weapons and abilities, diving into a gun-themed dungeon to find a weapon that can kill the past. The gameplay is pure twin-stick shooting, with dodge rolling that gives you brief invincibility frames. You'll need to master that roll timing, because rooms fill with intricate bullet patterns that require precision movement. What keeps this endlessly replayable is the absurd number of guns and items, from realistic weapons to completely ridiculous stuff like a gun that shoots bees or a mailbox that fires letters. Every run feels different because weapon and item combinations create unexpected synergies that can completely change your playstyle. The dungeon itself is procedurally generated, with secret rooms, hidden walls, and NPCs that unlock new content. Neon Abyss is a fast-paced, run-and-gun platformer roguelike with an insane amount of item synergies that can turn you into an absolute powerhouse. You're part of a special task force diving into the Abyss to take down gods and members of the new Pantheon, fighting through procedurally generated rooms filled with enemies and bosses. The gameplay is straightforward twin-stick shooting, where you're constantly moving, jumping, and blasting enemies while collecting hundreds of different items that stack and combine in wild ways. You might start with a basic pistol, but end up with homing shots, explosive bullets, and a dozen familiars following you around, dealing damage. The pet system is really cool. Eggs drop during runs that hatch into companions with unique abilities, and they can evolve based on your items. Between runs, you unlock new rooms in a hub area that provide permanent upgrades and minigames, like piano playing, or even a full dungeon management sim. The neon aesthetic is vibrant, with great synthwave music that keeps the energy high. Shotgun King is this brilliantly simple concept executed perfectly. It's chess, but you're the Black King with a shotgun fighting against an entire white army. Each turn, you move like a king in chess, one square in any direction. Then you can fire your shotgun, which has limited range and spread. The white pieces move according to chess rules, so knights jump in L shapes, bishops move diagonally, and you need to understand chess fundamentals to survive. After clearing each board, you choose between two cards. One that buffs you with things like extra movement or stronger shots, and one that buffs your enemies by adding more pieces or giving them new abilities. This risk-reward system creates incredible strategic depth because sometimes you need to take a difficult enemy buff to get the upgrade you need. The runs are quick, maybe 15 to 20 minutes, but the challenge ramps up fast as the boards get more crowded and enemies gain abilities like shooting back or moving twice. Children of Morta is a gorgeous pixel art action roguelike that tells the story of the Bergson family defending their homeland Mount Morta from an ancient corruption. What sets this apart is the narrative focus. You're not playing as one character, but switching between different family members, each with completely unique playstyles and abilities. The father, John, is a straightforward, sword-wielding fighter. Linda shoots fireballs from range. Kevin uses daggers and is super mobile. And there are 6 family members total to unlock and master. The dungeons are procedurally generated, but the story progresses between runs, with fully voiced cutscenes that develop each character and their relationships. Combat is fast-paced action, with dodge mechanics, special abilities on cooldowns, and each character levels up independently, while also contributing to family-wide upgrades that benefit everyone. The progression system is smart because even failed runs contribute experience and unlock permanent buffs, so you're always moving forward. Dave the Diver mixes roguelike diving expeditions with restaurant management in this incredibly charming adventure that kept me hooked for dozens of hours. You're Dave, a diver who explores the mysterious blue hole during the day to catch fish and discover secrets, then serves that fish at a sushi restaurant at night. The diving sections are where the roguelike elements come in. The blue hole changes layout every time you dive, and you have limited oxygen, so every dive is about balancing exploration, catching fish, and completing objectives before you need to surface. You'll encounter different fish species, environmental hazards, and even boss-level sea creatures that require strategy to defeat. The fishing itself uses a harpoon gun with limited ammo, and different fish require different approaches. Some are fast, others are aggressive. Back at the restaurant, you're managing the dinner service by serving customers quickly, hiring staff, and upgrading your menu with the fish you caught. Spelunky 2 is the ultimate test of skill and patience. A brutally challenging platformer roguelike, where every single run teaches you something new, even after hundreds of deaths. You're exploring procedurally generated caves filled with traps, enemies, and secrets, trying to reach the bottom while collecting treasure and rescuing lost explorers. The controls are incredibly tight and responsive. You can run, jump, climb, whip enemies, and throw objects with precision. But the game demands perfect execution because everything can kill you in 1 or 2 hits. What makes this so deep is the emergent gameplay from how every element interacts. You can throw rocks to trigger arrow traps, use ropes to reach high places, bombs to create new paths, and every item has multiple uses. If you're creative enough, the level generation is masterful, creating layouts that feel handcrafted despite being random, with secrets hidden everywhere, from hidden doors to entire alternate paths. You'll discover shortcuts, unlock new characters, and slowly piece together the ideal route through multiple branching areas. Astral Ascent is a gorgeous 2D platformer roguelike with incredibly fluid combat and a spell crafting system that lets you create insanely powerful ability combinations. You're choosing between 4 different heroes, each with unique abilities and playstyles, fighting through the 12 zodiac realms to defeat the corrupt gods controlling them. The movement is buttery smooth, with precise platforming, double jumps, dashes, and air control that feels fantastic. Combat revolves around building a deck of spell cards during each run. You'll draft offensive spells, defensive abilities, and powerful ultimates, then customize them further with modifiers that change how they function. You might turn a basic projectile spell into a bouncing, piercing, homing attack that triggers explosions. The spell synergies get wild when you start stacking the right modifiers together. Between runs, you're upgrading a skill tree for permanent stat boosts and unlocking new spells to find during runs. Inkulinati is one of the most unique roguelikes I've played, combining turn-based tactics with medieval manuscript aesthetics, where you're literally drawing units onto the page of an ancient book. You're an Inkulinati master, battling other masters by drawing creatures and beasts from a deck of animal units, each with different abilities and movement patterns. The gameplay is tactical and strategic. You're managing ink as a resource to draw units, positioning them carefully on a 2D battlefield, and using special moves called living ink to push enemies, create obstacles, or buff your units. The animals range from sword-wielding rabbits to donkeys that can blast enemies off the page with trumpet farts. Yes, seriously. And it's based on actual medieval marginalia. Each turn, you're deciding whether to draw new units, move existing ones, or use special abilities while managing your ink economy. The roguelike campaign has you traveling across a map, fighting different masters, recruiting new creatures to your deck, and choosing story paths that affect your journey. Dreamscaper blends action roguelike dungeon crawling with life simulation in a way that creates this meaningful connection between both gameplay styles. You're Cassidy, battling through surreal dreamscapes at night that represent her subconscious fears and emotions, then living her daily life during the day by building relationships with townspeople. The combat is fast-paced isometric action where you're dodging, attacking with melee weapons, and using ranged abilities with tight controls that feel responsive. During runs, you'll find different weapons from swords to yo-yos, each with unique movesets, plus tons of items that modify your abilities and stats. The dream levels are visually stunning, with abstract environments that shift between beautiful and nightmarish. Where this gets interesting is how your daytime activities directly affect your nighttime runs. Giving gifts to NPCs unlocks permanent upgrades, building relationships provides new abilities, and exploring the town reveals story details about Cassidy's struggles with depression and isolation. Slay the Spire is the game that defined the deck-building roguelike genre, and it's still one of the best examples of why this formula works so perfectly. You're climbing a spire across 3 acts, fighting enemies in turn-based card battles while building and refining your deck with each choice you make. The core gameplay has you playing cards from your hand that cost energy, with attacks to deal damage, skills for defense or utility, and powers that provide lasting effects. After each battle, you choose one of 3 random cards to add to your deck, and managing deck size and synergy is crucial. Sometimes the best choice is to not add a card at all. You're also collecting relics that provide powerful passive effects, visiting merchants to remove weak cards or buy upgrades, and making choices at random events that can help or hurt you. The 3 base characters play completely differently, with unique card pools and mechanics. The Ironclad is straightforward, with strength scaling. The Silent uses poison and card draw. The Defect builds up energy and summons orbs. Nuclear Throne. It's pure, unfiltered, adrenaline-pumping action that represents everything great about arcade-style roguelikes. You're selecting one of many mutant characters in a post-apocalyptic wasteland, fighting through procedurally generated levels filled with enemies, trying to reach the Nuclear Throne. The gameplay is top-down, twin-stick shooting that's brutally fast-paced and difficult. You're constantly moving, dodging bullets, and making split-second decisions about positioning and target priority. Every kill drops radiation that fills your mutation meter, and leveling up mid-run lets you choose mutations that dramatically change your capabilities, like extra health, faster movement, or ricocheting bullets. The weapon variety is fantastic, with over 120 different guns, from basic pistols to energy weapons and explosive launchers, each feeling distinct and powerful. What makes this so incredibly addictive is the flow state it creates. When you're in the zone, chaining kills, dodging through bullet patterns, and finding the perfect weapon combinations, nothing else compares. Into the Breach is a turn-based tactical roguelike that plays like a puzzle game, where every single move matters, and one mistake can doom your entire run. You're controlling giant mechs, defending the last remnants of civilization from an alien insect threat called the Vek, that emerge from the ground to attack power buildings and cities. The brilliance here is that you can see exactly what the enemies will do next turn, where they'll move, what they'll attack, so every turn becomes this tactical puzzle of positioning your mechs to block attacks, push enemies into water, or redirect their strikes. You only control 3 mechs per squad, each with different abilities, and battles take place on small grids where terrain matters as much as your weapons. Runs are relatively short, at around an hour, spanning multiple islands with the goal of protecting the power grid, because when it hits 0, it's game over. Between missions, you earn reputation to upgrade your mechs, unlock new abilities, and recruit pilots with unique passive bonuses. Shovel Knight Dig takes the beloved Shovel Knight formula and transforms it into a fast-paced roguelike where you're literally digging downward through procedurally generated levels. You're Shovel Knight, chasing after Drill Knight and his gang who've stolen your treasure, digging through the earth using your iconic shovel to break blocks, attack enemies, and discover secrets. The gameplay is all about momentum. You're constantly descending, bouncing off enemies with your shovel, finding optimal paths through the dirt, and collecting gems to spend at shops between levels. Each biome has distinct enemies, hazards, and environmental gimmicks that keep the action varied, and you'll unlock shortcuts and new areas as you progress deeper. Between runs, you're spending collected gems on permanent upgrades and unlocking new items that appear in future runs, creating steady progression even when you die. The level generation is smart, creating layouts that feel designed rather than random, with secret passages and optional challenges everywhere. Hades is the game that brought roguelikes to the mainstream and showed everyone how narrative and roguelike gameplay can blend perfectly together. You're Zagreus, son of Hades, trying to escape the underworld to reach the surface and find your mother, battling through procedurally generated chambers filled with mythological enemies. The combat is fast-paced isometric action, where you're dodging, attacking with your main weapon, and using god-given boons that dramatically modify your abilities. Maybe Zeus gives you chain lightning, or Athena adds deflection to your attacks. Every run, you're choosing which gods to accept boons from, building synergies between their powers, and adapting your strategy based on what you're offered. The weapon variety is fantastic, with 6 totally different arms from swords to guns, each with multiple hidden aspects that change their movesets entirely. What makes this revolutionary is the story. Every time you die and return to the House of Hades, you have new conversations with a massive cast of fully voiced characters, advancing personal storylines and learning more about the family drama. Rogue Legacy 2 takes everything that made the first game special and expands it into this massive, procedurally generated castle that's an absolute joy to explore and conquer. You're playing as a lineage of heroes, attempting to explore a cursed castle, and when you die, you play as one of your children, who inherits random traits and classes. The trait system is hilarious and impactful. One heir might have gigantism, making them huge. Another might see the world upside down, or have ADHD that makes enemies move faster. Each class plays completely differently, with unique weapons and abilities, from the standard knight to the bard, who attacks by dancing. The castle is procedurally generated, but divided into distinct biomes, with different enemy types, hazards, and environmental challenges that require specific skills to navigate. Combat is tight 2D action platforming, with responsive controls, dodge rolls, and tons of mobility options. When you die, you spend collected gold on permanent upgrades in your manor, stat increases, new classes, and special traits. Enter the Gungeon is a bullet hell masterpiece that combines incredibly tight twin-stick shooting with hundreds of creative weapons and items that create endless build possibilities. You're selecting one of several Gungeoneers diving into the Gungeon to find a weapon that can kill the past, fighting through procedurally generated rooms absolutely filled with bullets. The dodge roll is your best friend here with its invincibility frames, and mastering the timing to roll through bullet patterns is essential to survival. What makes this endlessly replayable is the weapon variety. There are over 300 guns, ranging from realistic firearms to completely absurd stuff like a gun that shoots mailboxes, a beehive that releases angry bees, or a gun that fires other guns. The item pool is equally massive, with active items, passive upgrades, and synergies that happen when you combine specific weapons and items. Every run feels different because your loadout drastically changes your approach, and discovering new weapons and synergies keeps things fresh dozens of hours in. The Binding of Isaac Afterbirth Plus is the definitive edition of one of the most influential roguelikes ever made, and it's absolutely packed with content that'll keep you playing for hundreds of hours. You're Isaac, escaping into the basement of your home to avoid your religious mother, navigating procedurally generated rooms filled with grotesque enemies inspired by biblical imagery. The top-down shooting has you firing tiers in cardinal directions, while dodging enemy patterns and environmental hazards. The item system is what makes this legendary. There are over 500 items that stack and combine in ways that can completely break the game, transforming you from weak and slow into an unstoppable monster. You might get an item that turns your tiers into homing missiles, another that makes them explosive, and another that shoots them in all directions at once. The synergies between items create insanely powerful combinations, and experimenting with different builds is endlessly entertaining. .30XX is a brilliant action platformer roguelike that takes the Mega Man formula and injects it with modern roguelike sensibility. and co-op support that makes it even better with a friend. You're choosing between two playable characters, Ace with her energy blaster and Mina with her power sword, fighting through procedurally generated levels to stop a rogue AI. The platforming is incredibly tight, with precise movement, wall jumps, dashes, and responsive controls that feel perfect. Levels are broken into segments that remix platforming challenges, enemy encounters, and environmental hazards in ways that create unique layouts every run. Between stages, you're choosing which boss to fight next, and defeating them grants you their weapon or ability that you can use for the rest of the run. The weapons have unique properties and uses beyond combat. Some let you access new areas or solve environmental puzzles. Between runs, you're spending currency on permanent upgrades through a skill tree and unlocking new powers that appear in future runs. Vampire Survivors is the game that spawned an entire subgenre, and it's easy to see why. The gameplay loop is absolutely hypnotic and borderline addictive. You're controlling a character who auto-attacks, while you focus purely on movement, surviving against endless waves of enemies for 30 minutes per run. The genius is in the simplicity. You move with the left stick, that's it, and your weapons automatically fire at nearby enemies. Every minute or so, you level up and choose from a selection of weapons or power-ups. And the strategic depth comes from building synergies between your choices. Weapons can evolve into more powerful forms when you combine them with specific items, completely changing how they function. There are dozens of characters with different starting weapons and stats, and each one requires different strategies to maximize. The maps are varied, with different enemy spawns and environmental hazards, and each run becomes this dance of positioning yourself to maximize damage, while avoiding the increasingly overwhelming hordes. Dead Cells is a masterclass in combat fluidity and build variety, combining Metroidvania exploration with roguelike progression in a way that feels absolutely incredible to play. You're a sentient blob of cells possessing corpses in a sprawling castle, fighting through interconnected biomes with tight 2D action combat. The movement is buttery smooth, with responsive controls that let you dash through enemies, roll under attacks, and chain mobility options together seamlessly. Combat revolves around finding weapons and skills during each run, with melee weapons, ranged weapons, shields, and deployable skills like turrets and traps. The build variety is enormous, with different stat scaling paths, brutality for melee damage, tactics for ranged builds, and survival for defensive playstyles. Weapons have unique movesets and special effects, and you're constantly swapping gear as you find better equipment. The procedurally generated levels have branching paths with different difficulties and rewards, and there are shortcuts and alternate routes that unlock as you progress. Hades 2 takes the top spot because it does the impossible. It takes everything that made the first game legendary and somehow makes it even better in every single way. You're now playing as Melinoë, princess of the underworld and sister to Zagreus, fighting your way out from the underworld up to the surface to defeat Kronos, the Titan of Time, who has taken over. The combat feels even more refined, with new weapons that are all incredibly fun to use, from the Witch's Staff to the Sister Blades, each with multiple aspects that completely change their movesets. The boon system returns, but expanded, with new gods offering fresh powers, and the synergies between boons create even more build variety than the original. What's incredible is how much content is here. Two completely different paths to fight through, with the underworld route and the surface route, each with unique biomes, enemies, and bosses. The story is just as compelling, with fully voiced dialogue, memorable characters both new and returning, and mysteries that unfold as you progress. Melinoë's personality is different from Zagreus, more serious and determined, and watching her relationships develop is just as engaging. And there you have it, my top 30 roguelike games for the Nintendo Switch. Each of these games offers something unique. Let me know in the comments which roguelike is your favorite, or if I missed any that deserve a spot on this list. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more gaming content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.